Music. Broadcasting from Millennium Student Center at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and online at UMSLradio.org. We are the voice of UMSL. We are UMSL Radio.
The opinions expressed on this program are the views of the host and not necessarily the views of the University of Missouri St. Louis or this station.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new year for That Science and Nature Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Howard, and joining me for this adventure, we have Webster Heffern.
Hello.
And Becky Hansis-Oneill.
How's it going?
So, if you were not with us last spring, we are a science and nature talk show. We discuss the news, longer form topic of the show. If you heard last year, we had lots of 4 or 5 people on the show. This year the cast's a little smaller, but I wanted to have them give a chance to introduce themselves. So Webster, why don't I start with you?
All right. Hi, I'm Webster. I'm a fifth-year PhD student here at UMSL. Hopefully that's my last year. That's what we all say. I study microbiology, and specifically I'm looking at antibiotic resistance evolution in the lab.
Very cool. And Becky, how about yourself?
I'm a third-year PhD student, and I'm in the Ecology, Evolution, and Behavior program, mostly focused on animal behavior, and I study tarantulas and bumblebees.
Very cool. And I'm your host, as I mentioned, Jeremy Howard. I'm a fourth-year PhD student. Wow, I can't believe it's already year 4. That's crazy. And I research bumblebees. I'm really interested in navigation, so how do animals get from point A to point B? They don't have GPSs in their pocket. They have to use, lots of different things to get around. That's what I'm really interested in. But this show is not necessarily about our research. This show is a broader talk show talking more casually about science and the world around us, because science happens everywhere, not just in academics. It happens, out in the wild. It happens in our government. It happens in business. There's lots of different avenues that science connects to, and this show kind of connects what's happening in the world to science and what we think about it, and we kind of discuss our thoughts on these topics. So the first part of this show, if you haven't listened before, is going to be all about the news. So this is just what's happened in the news and science around the world in the last week or two. And the second half of the show will be topic of the show, which will cover, again, a longer form topic, and we'll get to that soon. But I want to start it with our very first very first article today, which is all about a new planet has potentially been discovered it's being referred to as an exoplanet. So this comes to us from CNN. One of my friends from college actually sent this to me because he thought it was really cool, and I wanted to share it on the show. This article is called "Planet in quote-unquote habitable zone could have rare oceans and a possible sign of life, web data reveals." So basically, on the very outskirts of the solar system, so past the 9 planets that we know, the planets there are known as exoplanets, and they have discovered a new one. It is called K2-81b, which is not a very sexy name, I will admit, but I guess you have to name it something. And the big sort of hullabaloo about this is that they have discovered presence of carbon-bearing molecules. Carbon's really important because carbon is the building block of all life, so you need carbon to basically have life in the first place. And this is very exciting because, again, potentially we're looking for life on other planets. This is kind of a big deal with space exploration. What are the living things that are out there? What could there be? What can we find? That kind of thing. So what did we think initially about this article when we read it?
My gut reaction was when I saw that word dimethyl sulfide. As we'll discuss a little bit later, dimethyl sulfide is a molecule that is potentially only produced by life. So in order to see signs of that is wow, we've never seen this before.
So is dimethyl sulfide a metabolism byproduct? Where does it come from?
It is a secreted metabolism byproduct, and it actually plays a very important role in our Earth's atmosphere. It is a global cooling agent.
Oh, cool.
So it's a natural anti-global warming device, so to speak?
Yeah, it seeds clouds. So.
Wait, what clouds?
Seeds clouds.
What does that mean?
So to seed a cloud, it actually has 2 meanings. It either can be to make a cloud precipitate, or it can be to make a cloud form. In either case, you're making water droplets get bigger.
Okay. Why does that help? This is me not knowing.
Oh, so the cloud seeding, it happens through this process, they call it nucleation, droplet nucleation. So you provide a little core, and then the water molecules start to accumulate around that core. So dimethyl sulfide is one of those naturally produced agents that acts as a really good core for those water molecules then to gather around and start making big droplets.
Very cool. So does finding life on other planets excite you guys, even if it's not like, intelligent alien life? Is it just like that there's something there? Is that cool?
Definitely. I also think it was really cool that this follows the development of technology for exploration. Like Hubble got the first pictures, and now the Webb telescope has got us this new information. So yeah, I'm excited about the technology, and I'm also excited about life being there, even though we can't see what it might be or completely confirm it's there.
Well, I'm excited, but I'm also nervous. I mean, I'm very competitive. I want humans to be the best thing in the universe.
Oh, wow.
So
no room for anything else.
There is some hypothesis about that. It's like ecological game theory for intergalactic space travel.
Okay.
That any organisms that are able to expand outside of their solar systems and galaxies are really going to be really good at colonizing.
Huh.
So it's inevitably kind of a competition.
Okay.
I forget the name of it, but there's a whole hypothesis that revolves around this.
I wonder, though, when you get to that point of technology, are you still going to show the same behavioral aspects, or are you going to have a different sort of ethic?
I don't know. My hope is for a more cooperative ethic.
I would appreciate that as well.
Yeah. I mean, we've gotten so far by being cooperative, I'd say.
Yeah, though I would say humans are really good about starting wars, so that's my one concern about meeting other life is that I was like,
if you look at the data, even though, Ukraine, there's all kinds of conflict in the world, wars are decreasing in frequency and size. And the likelihood that any given person will die in a war, that probability has gone steadily down.
That's good.
Thank you for quoting that. That's relieving.
That's actually very nice. It's a very nice thought to have that there's less war.
I'm sure it's not comforting for people that are currently engaged in conflicts or come from places where war is a really big deal. Yeah. But statistically over time, we can see that trend.
That's good to know. So I guess one other thing on this article, this is an exoplanet that they're talking about, which is obviously very, very far away from our solar system. In terms of just space exploration and space travel, do you think in our lifetime we'll get to the point where humans will colonize any other planet, even if it's just Mars or something that's closer, but close, relatively speaking?
I think possibly. And I guess Mars would be a good test run. Mars might be more difficult, though, than someplace like this. If this place really does have liquid oceans, this place sounds a lot easier to colonize if we can get there than Mars. Unfortunately, it's just a lot farther away.
So why would Mars be harder to colonize than this exoplanet? If, let's say, distance was the same.
Well, I guess just it doesn't have the natural resources of water, of liquid water there for you.
What's its atmosphere like? Isn't it a lot thinner? Or non-existent?
Wait, Mars or the planet?
Mars.
Yeah, I believe it's quite thin. And I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, I'm not a Mars expert.
I'm not.
But I think that would make it hard, too.
Let's know from a biological perspective. Life likes water.
I like water.
All right, from a quick Google search, Mars' atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, then nitrogen, argon, some traces of oxygen and carbon monoxide amongst water and methane. So that's not entirely as good, I guess.
That raises the question, how would Mars look if we were looking at Mars from this far away? How would Mars look compared to this planet?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Probably no dimethyl sulfide.
Good point.
Well, I'm sure there will be much more in the coming years about space exploration and travel and discovery of other planets. But we're going to move on to our next article, which this is it sounds silly, but it's actually much more of a serious topic than you might think. This comes just from Futurism, and the title of this article is People Are Quote-Unquote Fishing by Just Throwing Dynamite in the Water. Subtitle being Blasting is Widespread, Misreported, and Ongoing. So this is covering blast fishing, which is an article that is all about fishermen basically dropping dynamite in the water to basically explode and then raise a bunch of fish to the top of the water to gather them out instead of just doing regular fishing. So, I mean, I feel like I vaguely knew about dynamite fishing, but I was surprised to hear that so many people did it.
Jeremy, would it be okay? Was he saying that he could hear us or not?
Honestly, I don't know.
I believe he was saying he couldn't hear us, but we can continue with this. This blast fishing does sound terrible. One thing that distressed me instantly was I saw it was happening in Sri Lanka. I know I like to scuba dive in Maldives, and it certainly would not be safe for a diver under the water, and it certainly is not safe for the habitats that we like to explore.
What about you, Becky? Any thoughts on dynamite fishing?
This is something I've heard about before and read about. So this wasn't new news, but it's definitely a bummer. I wish the article talked a little bit more about the motivations, and if this is, it made it sound like maybe it was local people that were going fishing, but sometimes fishermen from other countries will go into waters from places like Sri Lanka and that kind of thing. So I kind of wanted to know where this was coming from and what they were getting out of it, because that would really help address the problem. Are people really hungry? Are they very poor?
Yeah, that is sad that people would go to other countries and do that and destroy the other country's habitat without that much direct consequence to their own nation.
Yeah, from a purely, I guess, cold, calculated business standpoint, I'm like, all right, it makes sense. You do whatever you can to make the most profit immediately, but it's sort of the not looking at the long-term ramifications of what you're doing and how that might help. Though, to Becky's point about the poverty, if you have, a bunch of people you got to feed in your village or hometown area, it's like, I guess you kind of have to get as much as you can and hope to, not let them die. So
maybe that reminds us, there's always almost extra goals that conservationism needs to take up, and one might be feeding those areas that are otherwise inclined to engage in practices like this. If the only way that an area can feed itself is by destroying the environment, it is a benefit to conservation otherwise to feed that area.
Yeah. My other thought on this was just kind of like, are they just bad fishermen because they can't catch enough fish? Because they're like, dynamite's kind of the lazy, like, well, it'll explode and just hit this giant area and all the fish will rise up because we aren't capable of physically just, like, we don't have the skill to put the net in the water and actually catch the fish or fish them with fishing poles. So we're just going to kind of, like, try the very shotgun blunt approach.
That could be a money thing, all the nets and stuff.
That's true. But wouldn't dynamite be more expensive? Maybe? I feel like explosives would just cost a lot of money.
I like the bad fisherman hypothesis. It reminds me of like cheating in a video game. Like, I can't actually go through this stage, so I'm just going to cheat for the really big gun and blow everything up.
Huh. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. There's games where you can, instead of just fishing, you can drop like a grenade or a landmine in the water and just blows up all the fish. I was like, this sounds like a video game.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I just want to mention one more thing on this. They mentioned that this is messing up subsequent generations of fish. So not only are they destroying local habitat, but they're preventing fish in the future from then being there and then feeding the area. And in addition to messing up those generations, it wasn't mentioned in the article here, but I'm sure destroying those reefs does not help the food chain in general.
Yeah, there's definitely long-term ramifications on that. So do you think the article kind of teases a little bit, but do you think this is an issue of government not cracking down enough, or do you think this is, again, more of the poverty thing? Do you think like government's really got to like be patrolling the waters more with like the navies and all that?
Both. So there's so many countries that don't have a big Coast Guard or a Navy that can't police these things. And then if you have extra motivation from either poverty or greed from fishermen coming from other places, there's a really good book called Outlaw Ocean that goes over a lot of this and why it's so difficult for many countries to actually police their own waters.
Interesting. Does that book also cover topics like whaling?
It does, and slavery in the fishing industry, which a lot of folks don't realize. People will get in debt either from drugs or occasionally prostitution, and they say to pay off this debt you have to work on the boat. And then people just get stuck there because they don't have their passport or a way to advocate for themselves. So it's pretty widespread.
Whoa.
That's pretty awful.
That's intense. I did not know that was a thing.
Indentured servitude.
Huh. Well, I was digging a little bit more into the fishing thing because the fishing article refers to another paper, which is like a more professional scientific paper. And even though they mostly talk about Sri Lanka, it seems like most of the blast fishing is happening around the Pacific Ocean area and like the Philippines, off the coast of China, that kind of stuff. There's a little bit in Africa, but not as much in terms of what's reported. Obviously, there could be more. And then a little bit in South America. But yeah, it seems to be largely an issue in the Pacific Ocean area. So, yeah. Any last thoughts on fishing with dynamite?
Please don't blow up the fish.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. And for our last article, to wrap up the news, this comes to us from Science News, and this is all about the title being Living in a Disadvantaged Neighborhood Affects Food Choices, Weight Gain, and Even Microstructure of the Brain. So this is a study done by UCLA. So it's the School of Medicine there, and they basically looked at a bunch of neighborhoods around Los Angeles, both more affluent and more poor. Kind of found the connections that these areas that don't have very good access to food or very good nutritional quality of their food have a mix of issues with their brain, so issues with the cortex, which is involved with things like reward, regulation of emotions, and cognition. The thing that was unique was the brain aspect of this article. It seems like we kind of already knew that people who live in poor neighborhoods, don't have very good, health because they don't have good food access or they live in a food desert. So that part seemed obvious. The brain thing was really the interesting piece of the article that I want to talk about.
I absolutely agree. That's not the brain. The idea that there were all these associations, and some of them actually were directly associated with the obesity that then correlated with the neighborhoods, but some of them were just independently associated with the neighborhood. That was just a big wow. Something some of us may have hypothesized, but the idea that they finally found evidence of this is pretty powerful.
I had mixed feelings about it because at its heart, this is a correlational observational study. This isn't experimental testing. So we have a bit of a chicken and an egg problem. And the article itself, the scientific article, is very good about drawing those distinctions. They say diet may affect the brain. Neighborhood may affect the brain. They're very clear. But the summary, the actual layman article, is not like that. It says diet does affect the brain in this case in a very specific way. So this was very interesting to me, and I wanted to go further and see, are there some animal models of these brain changes when they eat all these trans fats? And I'm sure, and I hope that there are if we're making these claims, but I was sort of less floored by it.
I did appreciate the explanations, the hypothetical explanations, and things that they possibly could test in smaller models, not humans.
So, I guess prior to this, is there a lot of connection between the brain and diet? Because typically we think of the brain as just kind of, it's not like a muscle or a bone. It's not something you've this is going to sound very naive. I guess the way I always traditionally thought of it is it's just there. It's there, and you have to use it to, kind of strengthen that kind of thinking processes and stuff. But the nutrients, I feel like everyone mostly thinks about it as going to my muscles and my heart. So I can kind of keep that upkeep. How much connection, from what you guys know, is there between nutrition and the brain?
I believe there's quite a bit. I always think about brain and blood sugar. And when we have low blood sugar, our brains kind of tank out and we might feel like passing out or whatever. We have very, very high blood sugar. We get all wound up. So there is that direct nutritional effect in terms of how much energy is available. I think Becky might know a lot more about this because Becky, you guys might not know, was a psychology major in undergraduate.
Gonna crack your knuckles, drop some knowledge.
I have been called out. One thing that comes to mind for me is studies of nutrition and early childhood. For example, if you have children that do not have good nutrition before age 3, they don't really catch up cognitively to their peers. I'm sure there's lots of interventions and variations among individuals. So if you're out there and you didn't get enough to eat before age 3, don't panic. A lot of variation. A trend cannot predict individual outcomes. But that's the big one that I think of is when the brain is growing. If you don't get proper nutrition, you're going to have problems.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, is there connections between developmental disabilities like autism or Down syndrome and nutrition, or is there no?
Not those.
Okay.
Because remember, Down syndrome is completely genetic.
Right, it's genetic chromosomes, yeah.
And there's more and more evidence about autism that genetics play a role in that. It's a lot more complicated.
Okay.
So I'm sure there's particular developmental concerns that pediatricians could name, but I don't know what they are, and they're not going to be Down syndrome or autism.
Other thoughts on nutrition in the brain and disadvantaged neighborhoods? Is there ways to combat this?
So I think there's actually some cool programs in St. Louis.
Okay.
Like they talked about folks getting a lot of fast food, fried food. So these are cheap, high calorie. Like there's reasons people do this, right? But I know at the Ferguson Farmers Market near where I live, you can actually go use, I think it's WIC and food stamps to get veggies.
Oh, nice.
So you can actually go to the farmers market that pops up every Saturday, Sunday. So I think getting rid of food deserts and making fresh foods more accessible, education about these things, ways to make it faster to get these foods. Because let's say you're working 2 jobs because you don't make a lot of money. It's so much easier to get food out of a bag or swing through McDonald's than it is to, like, I'm going to chop up this zucchini and bake this chicken. you know where I'm going.
Yeah. I, as someone who tries to do that as much as possible, like, it's kind of a pain. It's like, okay, I have to set out this 3-hour block of my window on Sunday to cook, because if we don't, then we'll just grab something from a bag, and that's not great.
Yeah. As a college student, I also struggle with this.
Yeah, I've gotten better since I've been out of undergrad, like, because I'm like, you kind of have that realization once you leave. I'm like, okay, my body is not quite what it once was. I need to take a little more care of myself now, versus, like, I think of all the crap I ate in undergrad, like, it was like, all right, we don't have time for breakfast. I'm just going to grab this granola bar, maybe an orange, and, like, this other thing will be lunch. And then, like, if it's an exam day, it's like, went to, like, the, not, like, snack bar, but, like, they have, like, little restaurants and stuff like we do on campus where you can just grab quick things. Like, I'm going to grab this, like, chocolate smoothie, and that's going to be breakfast. It's going to be very high in sugar, but it will get me through this exam in an hour that I didn't sleep for because I was studying all night. So I'm sure you have similar anecdotes throughout your time.
I'm pretty terrible about food, I'll be honest. I have a husband who cooks for me, and otherwise it's fast food or these protein drinks. So.
What does he like to cook?
Oh, he's from China, so he cooks native Sichuanese food. It's pretty fabulous.
Ooh, that sounds great.
It does sound really
Definitely
good.
compensates for my otherwise poor diet choices.
So get someone who can cook for you is what I'm hearing.
Well, like Becky's saying, these people could use someone who could cook for them.
Yeah.
Like this would help provide them with the nutrition that would not encourage this poor brain development and or poor brain progression.
Yeah. This is not directly related to the article, but I think cooking in general is a life skill that everyone should try to acquire. I'm not saying you need to be like a professional chef, but like being able to like chop vegetables and like bake things, like those are good skills.
Yeah, I never got to do that in home economics or anything in school.
We always made like junk food. We made like cookies and stuff, so like I learned those basics, but like most of the cooking I learned was from my mom, so that worked out pretty well.
Good mom.
Yes. All right, but if we don't have anything else to talk about with what's the name of this article, the Science Daily article on disadvantaged neighborhoods and brain structure, we can move on to topic of the show.
Sounds good.
All right, we will be right back right after this.
Hey, I'm Jalen Walker Wright, the General Manager of UMSL Radio. We are excited to be back on the air this semester and glad you're tuned in. We are also excited as this is UMSL's 60th anniversary. UMSL Radio had its first broadcast here in the MSC on April 17th, 2007, and has been a part of this university ever since. Our logo incorporates the red and the gold. We as Tritons embrace. We here at UMSL Radio say, congrats to UMSL for 60 years. Go Tritons.
All right, and we're back. So now it's time for topic of the show. Topic of the show is a long-form conversation we have about some kind of topic in the news based on what's currently happening, some kind of idea that I have that would be good for long-form discussion. And what we're going to talk about today is urban heat islands. So summer's coming to an end. It's starting to get cooler now, but if you were, in St. Louis, you experienced a lot of heavy heat waves, particularly around July when it got to 104 degrees is what I have, I think, in my notes was the record. So very, very hot. Not really a fun time. I would have wanted to be anywhere else, but, melting in the hot summer sun, like in an ice cube. But yeah, this is kind of a big issue we have in cities nowadays. Cities are very hot compared to the rural areas in the country, and it's only getting hotter with global warming, and we kind of have to be stuck contending with the hot human environments going forward, especially since cities are getting larger and larger. More and more people live in cities. I think the estimated statistic is about 80% of people around the world live in cities. It's not a lot of people that live in the country or elsewhere. So yeah, we have to contend with this. And yeah, it's very, very hot. And I guess just to start off the conversation about urban heat islands is, how was your summer? How did you deal with the heat?
I actually stayed inside most of this summer. It was a
Lucky
little
duck.
too warm. I'm not saying it was so dramatically warmer than prior summers, but it was enough warmer where I was just like, on many days during times of year when I otherwise would have spent a little more time outside, I was like, I'm just going to chill out and do my research. And I got a lot of research done, but in terms of having fun outside, maybe went to the pool twice. And otherwise was indoors.
I spent most of my summer in Costa Rica, where it was cooler than St. Louis, Missouri. So,
okay. So I was in St. Louis pretty much for the entire summer. I did my field research outside, catching bumblebees pretty much all around the city. And let me tell you, it was pretty miserable some days going out when it was super hot and sticky. And I even went out when it was like 98, 99, 100 degrees. I tried my best to, drink lots of water, stay in the shade. But yeah, it was pretty miserable.
One thing that really stood out to me was the number of weeks we had where it was just like 95 or above the entire week. Just this continuity of heat. And then you get the nice continuity of coolness. But I think that's one of the things that we're seeing. I don't know, but to me, that's one of the things that I'm starting to pick up on with climate change. Less immediate fluctuation, more of these prolonged heat waves or prolonged cooler waves.
Yeah, definitely long stretches of heat. I will also say my AC bill was very high for several of these months.
oh my goodness. Yeah. My house was built in 1926. It doesn't have the greatest insulation. And we had a couple months where our electric bill was $300.
Oh my God. I paid close to $100 for, a handful of the summer months. But yeah, it was a lot of like, I'm going to take an ice cold shower before bed and like hope for the best, turn the AC down a little bit. So yeah, that was not fun. So yeah, it's been very, very hot. I think, moving on to the discussion, cities have what's called an urban heat index. And that basically is this metric where you compare how many degrees warmer it is in a city compared to like a rural or a natural area outside the city. So I have a little list here. Do you guys want to guess around the United States what the hottest cities are with the highest urban heat index?
Ooh.
At the top 5.
Phoenix.
Oh, that's a good guess.
That is a good guess. It's not in the top 5.
What?
It's in the top 10, but...
Okay.
Miami?
Also, no. Think of really large cities.
New York.
New York is number 1. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Concrete jungle.
Okay, then Chicago?
Chicago's number 5.
Los Angeles?
Los Angeles is number 3. So you got 2 and 4.
Something like Houston?
Houston is number 2.
Okay.
And then there's one, the number 4 guess. I'll say also a city in Texas.
Dallas.
It's Dallas, yep. So these very, very large, sprawling cities with millions and millions of people have the highest heat index, because one of the sort of, not indicators, but one thing that influences the urban heat index is the number of people living in an area. So obviously, the heavily populated areas, it's much hotter overall. So yes, it's very, very hot. We obviously don't live in a New York City or a Los Angeles, but St. Louis still suffers from these effects all the same. So we're talking about urban heat islands and everything. Do you think there are good ways that we can kind of mitigate this as a city or as, St. Louis citizens, besides just suffering or paying $300 for AC?
Plant more trees. Let's get some shade.
I was looking up ways. One that surprised me was actually solar panels will reduce the heat island effect if they're properly placed. So those on your roof will reduce the heat island effect. A solar farm out in the middle of a field will increase the heat island effect because you now have more absorption of sun than you otherwise would. But when you put a solar panel on your roof, you have less absorption of sun than you otherwise would, and you're getting energy out of it.
Very cool. Solar panels are kind of expensive, though, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the bougie
The bush.
way.
That's something with climate change that has vexed me greatly, because there's lots of programs where if you do maybe solar panels or, like in my case, upgrade your insulation or your AC system or what have you, that you can get a tax credit or you can apply for a grant after you install these things. But I don't know very many people that have a few $1,000s to pay a contractor to ever install these things up front.
No, that's a really good point. It's always an ex post facto tax credit. But I think that's actually to deter too many people from engaging at once because maybe the government doesn't have that much money to dole out in these credits.
Yeah, I think you'd also have to deal with fraud. But at the same time, it's sort of the rich get richer, the nice cities get nicer kind of effect, because those are the folks that can afford to throw a solar panel on and get the tax credit.
Yeah, solar panels are definitely something I would like to have in a house one day. Just anecdotally, because I run around the city collecting bees all summer, definitely in the historic district where it's like all concrete and like no trees. It's very, very hot.
Oh, yeah.
And the nice affluent areas where it's very shady and there's lots of trees, it's much, much nicer. So it's definitely eyewitness support of what Becky just said. But yes. So where would we plant these trees? So just kind of everywhere or around or...
Well, I think you'd want them to shade concrete where it is safe, or possibly your house where it is safe. I have a nice sycamore tree in my backyard. I want to take good care of it.
Oh, we had a beautiful sycamore tree in our front yard, and it unfortunately, this was many, many years ago, and it unfortunately got eaten alive by termites or something.
Oh, no.
And we came back to visit the house one day, and it was just gone.
Wow.
But it was this big, gorgeous tree. I grew up surrounded by really big trees, and I'm always sad when I drive through strip mall areas where there's just no trees, like St. Charles Rock Road near here.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what something's missing here? Oh, right, the color green. It's Becky, do you have any suggestions for trees that might grow faster or taller?
I don't off the top of my head, but there's really great native plant guides from Missouri Department of Conservation, Missouri Prairie Foundation. I think Grow Native is another good website where you can look up trees. You can also get utility companies. There's a form you fill out online to come mark your utilities so you know where to plant your tree without messing up your gas line. And they'll do that for free. So that wasn't the exact answer to your question, but hopefully that's helpful.
No, it provides resources, though, to which I then can go.
So just looking online on climatecentral.org, which is a great website for all things climate change and managing summer heat. Additional things they mentioned besides planting trees. They actually mentioned planting trees along paved streets. That's probably good because lots of people use the sidewalk. That makes sense when you're outside. Green roofs, so rooftop gardens, adding more vegetation on top of roofs. I know, or in past classes, I know we talked about green roofs a lot with like Chicago and other cities have done this with like kind of planting things throughout the city to help out. But I don't know if St. Louis would be able to do, like, I don't know how much roof space we have for that because the buildings and I don't know.
It also depends on the angle of the roof.
Yeah.
Because most of the roofs are like flat, but I feel like in the historic area, like downtown and inner city, I've seen like very flat roofs.
Oh, well, that would help though for a green roof, right?
Oh yeah, in that sense. But versus like the suburbs, I mean. Which have pretty much mostly been slanted roofs, like normal house roofs.
Yeah, it'd be hard to put on my roof, but...
Yeah.
There was somewhere I saw many years ago, like 2009, these great moss installations that they had, and that would just sit there and soak up CO2, and meanwhile we're providing shade, cooling off the local area. They were kind of hygroscopic, so they're pulling in some water. But I don't know where it was that I saw all these giant moss installations. Is either of you?
I've never heard of this until you just brought it up.
But that sounds like something you could do on a slanted roof.
Yeah, actually. I could see backlash from like homeowners associations, though, because generally homeowners associations are very picky about what goes in their neighborhood houses they walk by, even though it doesn't actually affect them at all. I volunteered at a community outreach event in Old North, which is the historic district, on Saturday, and ran a little pollinator table. Our advisor, Becky, my advisor, does bee stuff, so we're a very pollinator-heavy centric lab. And I had some people come up and talk to me like, what are some things we can do to make our yards more pollinator-friendly? And I was like, plants-friendly pollinator plants, which is great. But I also mentioned, I'm like, you don't have to use your whole yard, because I know a lot of people like have to mow their lawn or want to, or their homeowners association makes them do that. So there are ways to kind of satisfy both parties. So I imagine there would be ways to have moss roofs and not, tick off the homeowners association. All right, other things, green roofs is another way I mentioned. Cool roofs. So these are made of highly reflective and emissive materials that remain cooler than traditional materials, help to reduce energy use. Have not heard of these. They sound expensive.
Yeah, I was like, I'd like that. I probably can't afford that.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like if I build, your dream house, you can install this stuff. And then the last one they talk about is cool pavement, which is an alternative to conventional concrete and asphalt. Can reach peak summer temperatures of 120 to 150 degrees and radiate the heat, contributing to the nighttime urban island heat effect. So pavements are also reflective, and permeable materials help reduce surface temperatures. There's currently a lot more research and development going on onto cool pavement. So kind of some future avenues there for other ways to mitigate heat. Though I also imagine, like with cool roofs, cool pavement is probably going to be expensive.
Do you know what color this cool pavement tends to be? Like if I were walking around, could I recognize it?
Let's Google it. Go to good old Google Images. Cool pavement.
I've seen some redder pavements, and I've always wondered, what is the purpose of that?
All right. It looks like from the photos, it's just kind of the same color. There's they have squares here. Actually, there's frequently asked questions about cool pavement. Let's click on the link. Go down this rabbit hole. All right, it's loading.
It looks a little lighter, like maybe it's a coating that goes on it.
Yeah.
Rather than a mix.
Yeah, there must be something they're mixing the three. It looks like just tan, like if concrete that's been out for years kind of loses that dark and black color.
It looks kind of like bleached concrete, so it's just designed to a coating that makes it more reflective.
Right, because obviously darker materials absorb more light, so that kind of makes sense. All right, well, that's cool. Hopefully that's something that kind of gets kicked off. Though I imagine we would need governments to kind of implement that with, keeping the sidewalks and stuff, which just anecdotally in St. Louis, the sidewalks are not very well upkept. So,
but also I look out at places like UMSL, and I think most of these pavements are probably on the cooler side. They're fairly light in color, and major campuses can make this sort of choice. So it could be governments, but also anything that owns a major campus.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Also, to mention with urban heat island effects, ways that are reducing the effect. If we can't reduce it, unfortunately, the extreme heat does have public health effects. So again, coming from Climate Change Central, they talk about with the Centers of Disease Control and everything, that high heat causes a number of issues, potentially dehydration is the obvious one. Things like heat exhaustion and heat stroke could be extreme things you suffer in the summer if you're not getting enough water, or you have to be outside exposed to extreme heat in these cities. So heat can kill, even though we don't typically think of it quite like that. So definitely incentives for us to try and reduce the urban heat island effect. All right, so let's see. Do I have anything else I want to discuss about urban heat island effect stuff? Oh, yes, this other question. I guess long term, let's say the urban heat island effect keeps getting worse and worse, and it's not being mitigated as well as we would hope. Does that make you reconsider living in a city or living near a city? Long term, not just right now.
I would reconsider anyway,
okay.
Even without the heat island effect.
What would make you reconsider anyway?
I like to be more spread out. I like to have easy access to hiking where there's not a lot of people around. There's always people here. And the noise of living in an urban area is not my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be nice to live. Right now, I live in one of the most elevated properties in the city of St. Louis, and there's a bit of a point of pride in that.
When you say elevated, you mean literally?
Literally elevated, okay. Yes. It is a very high elevation property. And it's nice to look down on all the commoners.
On the commoners.
No, I mean, it's
don't have to worry about the
no
runoff
more expensive
water
than any of the other houses. But to be honest, though, I think I would definitely consider moving out to the country, or at least to a less densely populated area, for the reasons that Becky cited, also for these heat island reasons. It is getting too hot in the summer. And also, it's nice to be out and to witness what does the real world look like. Because Jeremy's mentioning, the urban world is just such a different microcosm than what everything else is, and it's going to become more and more different as these populations get denser and denser.
Yeah, I definitely would probably think about leaving the city. Even, like Becky said, just for other reasons, like, it's nice to have space and not be right on top of everybody and living in an apartment, just dealing with random people's noise at 3 a.m. or just people having parties and stuff. And, like, as I'm getting older, I'm like, I like my solitude a little more, so.
Yeah, I want to have little chickens and a vegetable garden.
The people in the city do have that. Like, I've been serving a lot of, like, community yards and stuff, and, like, there are people with, like, chicken coops and, like, things in their back city yard, so there is a way to do it.
Our house has a chicken. It came with a small chicken coop, but the yard is small enough that they would definitely conflict with my dogs. I'm sure if I let them out to graze, they would get into my neighbor's yards. So.
Yeah, I would worry about pets running off. I have a friend who just moved into his house, like, in March, and this is in the suburbs, it's not directly in the inner city, but the fence not very well kept, so dogs got under fence, ran around neighborhood. He had to spend like an afternoon chasing after them, almost got hit by cars. They're fine, but just like heart attack moment as pet owner. Yeah. So basically he was like, had to get chicken wire, install it all over the fence, like fix all of the fence, spend several $1,000s on that, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. It's tough.
It is tough. So, got to secure those fences. All right. But I think that's pretty much going to wrap up our discussion on urban heat islands.
Do we want to do a plug for the Whitney R. Harris Center for World Ecology?
Do. Do it, Becky.
All right. So, coming up on September 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at the St. Louis Zoo, we're having annual conservation forum for the Whitney R. Harris Center for World Ecology, which is a nonprofit here at UMSL. And the theme is It's Getting Hot in Here, Urban Heat Effects in St. Louis. So you can go to the Harris Center's website, just pop it into Google, and there's a form to register to go to that event. It's free.
Yes. Lots of great speakers are going to be there. We're going to have a historic city planner. He's from Texas. He's not from St. Louis. Coming in, talking about ways that we can kind of, reduce the urban heat island effect more strategically than we've discussed, because we're not, city planners. We're graduate students. We're also going to have a historian there who's going to talk about the history of heat island effects just across America in general. And I forget who the third speaker is, but it's going to be a really good time. You're going to find a lot of great information about urban heat island effects, how it has happened, how we can kind of move forward and mitigate it better overall. So it should be a very good night. You also get a free dinner if you sign up. So free food is nice as a student. But yeah, that's going to wrap up our discussion on urban heat islands for our topic of the show. We'll be right back to close out the show with with our concluding segment of Outside of Science. Stay tuned.
The Indian Student Association is very excited to host their first event for this semester on September 19th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Century Room A. It's called the Trunk Tales. We celebrate this day offering prayers with love and joy to our beloved Lord Ganesha. His glory and presence will be loved and celebrated by everyone in India on this day. We, as representatives of our cultures and traditions, are here to spread and share them with people around the world gathered here at UMSL. Please join us in celebrating our culture, to enjoy the traditional Indian food, and also we have got a surprise element planned for the day. So please don't miss out the happy moments on September 19th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Century Room A.
And we're back with our final segment, going to be called Outside of Science. This is a new segment we're adding for this show this year, where we're just kind of going to share, stuff we've been doing, fun activities, hobbies, if we went somewhere, if we watched a TV show, anything to kind of prove that, we do things outside of science. We're not just robots. So this is very free-form, off the cuff. Does anyone have anything they want to share? I can go first. I'm currently watching Ahsoka on Disney+. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I love it so much. It's super great. There's all the stuff from the animated shows, the Clone Wars and Rebels, coming into live action, which if you've been watching Star Wars content for the last, decade, it's super, super awesome and super, super satisfying. Rosario Dawson is amazing as Ahsoka. I'm trying to remember who else is on the show. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Rosario Dawson's amazing. And I haven't seen last week's episode, so I know, there's stuff from, the movies with, Anakin Skywalker showing up and stuff. But it's been a real good time.
Well, that sounds like a lot more fun than I've been having. I got my first 3rd-degree burn last weekend.
Oh my God! What?
From boiling water. I was taking something out of the oven. It was hotter than expected, and it was a bowl, a dish inside of another dish containing water, and the other dish containing water was actually there to try to modulate the temperature of the other dish, but because the oven was running too hot, the water was near boiling and splashed out onto my leg. And so ballroom dance this afternoon, which is my other major hobby, is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you went to the emergency room immediately.
Well,
because a 3rd-degree burn would imply
some of us
that
are more
you would see
responsible than,
muscle and bone.
others, Jeremy. Not quite to the bone, but
Okay.
I can show you if you want.
I would like to see this.
Oh,
burn.
whoa, okay, wow, that's real.
I do feel like perhaps you should visit the Student Health Center for that.
I think it's going to be okay. It's healing. It's been healing up. Okay.
Okay.
Today
As long as
looks
it's
worse.
healing.
Yeah. It looks, but it feels much better. So, and I'm on 2 antibiotics right now
Okay, good.
already.
I was
That's
gonna
the
say-
most important part. If you get a major open wound, make sure you take antibiotics, but not too many. Not too few. Just a quick note for antibiotic resistance evolution. Please make sure you complete your course of antibiotics after they are prescribed by the doctor.
Yeah, that was bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
I hope you feel better soon.
You can bring us back down, Becky.
Well, I have been engaging in unhealthy graduate student behavior, not actually engaging with my hobbies so much. I've been watching some TV shows. I've been enjoying What We Do in the Shadows all
Nice.
summer.
I've heard that's very good.
It's funny. I like it. I read a book over the summer, the sequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, if anyone's interested in fantasy.
Okay.
And I've managed to get long COVID, so that's been exciting.
I'm sorry, that sucks.
So, yeah.
Yeah, my first year when I taught, it was spring of 2021 when the vaccines were just rolling out, and one of my students got long COVID, and she just permanently has like bronchitis, like forever.
Oh.
And I was just like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what else to say to console her. It's just like, I will do my best to help you with these assignments, but like, I'm so sorry. Like, it sucks that this happens.
Yeah. Luckily, there's a lot of people that have much worse symptoms than myself, but I'm unlucky in the sense that I had all my vaccines and boosters. The COVID case I had was not very severe, but now I have like arthritic joint pain that's not resolving, so now I'm on arthritis meds.
I hate to bring up something sciencey again, but are there any correlations
For the outside
between...
of science segment, how dare
yes,
you?
I know. But are there any correlations between long COVID and the number of vaccines that you've had priorly?
I've read some abstracts. I haven't like dug into the primary literature, but there's a couple papers that point to having your vaccines and lower risk for long COVID. But, that's on average, right? That doesn't...
Yes.
So it didn't
A trend
predict.
cannot predict an individual outcome.
Exactly. So,
All right. Well, very cool. Any final thoughts as we wrap up the show?
it's good to be back.
It is good to be back.
Good to be here. It's my first episode, so thank you both.
Yes, we're very excited to have future episodes. I'm just going to get quick, as a final thought, I just remembered. I just want to say thank you to you, Becky, and to Andrea Trigueros, Eunice Kahn, and Sebastian Ford for helping me kick off the show this past year. Building the show from literally nothing was kind of daunting task, and you guys made it so much worth the while and a lot of fun, and I had a great time. That's why I wanted to continue doing the show on UMSL Radio. And bringing on Webster and everything is going to be a lot of fun for the school year. I'm excited. We're hopefully for season 2, that's this year, going to have guests on. So I'm hoping to try and book more students and potentially faculty. We'll see. To kind of add their perspectives and their voices overall. So it should be a good year. But yeah, I want to say thank you to our season 1 cast because I could not have done it without you. Yes.
Thanks, Jeremy, and you're very welcome.
All right. And with that, you have been listening to That Science and Nature Show. Thank you so much for listening this week. We will be back next week, Tuesday at 9 a.m. Until then, my name is Jeremy Howard, and we are out.